out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Good morning, Tim.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great.
Are you?
Yeah.
Good.
Are you?
I'm still a little weirded out.
Oh, by the film we watched?
Yeah.
The film for what?
For our podcast?
For our podcast, Dismembering Horror. Welcome, everyone. This is episode 48.
Whoa.
Oh, right? Tim just said, whoa. Sorry, I cut you off. That was an official whoa from Tim.
Damn,
regarding we have reached episode 48 of this here podcast show, Dismembering Horror. The podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie,
and myself, Tim Haslin,
we talk about what worked, what did not work for us, and anything we found interesting or noteworthy of a horror film, aka we dismember it. And how do we choose our horror films, Tim? What are we looking for?
It depends. But usually we just pull from a list that we compiled from other lists of like good horror films or like obscure horror films or like things that people wanted us to see that they recommended.
That's our favorite when you tell us what to see. And that doesn't mean it's got to be all obscure.
No.
Though that's been often what people want to hear dismembered.
Yeah. And then sometimes we just go to a movie.
Yeah. Got to stay up on the ones that interest us. And so I think this was maybe one of the most hyped, anticipated.
It was pretty hyped, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, amongst us, and then I think among people like us, which were a lot. Mm-hmm. People who enjoyed Hereditary.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we haven't guessed it, I don't think we've said it. We're talking about Midsommar today.
Yep, an Ari Aster joint.
Yeah. Exactly. Should we get into any other business to wrap up before we watched Audition last time? Poltergeist 2 before that?
No, we've had a run though.
Yeah.
I think I've liked pretty much everything we've watched for the last like 5.
Well, let's see if the hat that we pull our next film from, the gods of the hat, deem it so.
That's right.
Maybe we should do some ritualistic sacrifices in order to appease the hat gods.
We can do that.
In order to get a good next movie. It's going to be Goosebumps.
Oh my God.
It's the one I'm looking forward to, Tim's dreading.
Fair enough. I mean, I just feel like it's homework because then I have to like figure out what it's all about.
Of Goosebumps, the movie. Which is,
I have no context.
Makes me that much more excited to do it. Tim's brain trying to figure out what the heck
is this? Do I have to go read books?
Anyways, we'll talk about Goosebumps when we talk about Goosebumps. Today we're here to talk about Midsommar. Let's watch the trailer.
Okay.
I told you that I want to go to that festival in Sweden.
No, you said it would be cool to go.
Yeah, and then I got the opportunity and I decided to do it.
I don't mind you going. I just wish you would have told me. That's all.
Dude, she needs a therapist. You've been wanting out of this stupid relationship for like a year now.
And don't forget about all of the beautiful Swedish women you meet in June.
Okay, guys.
That's not her again. Seriously?
Babe, what's happening? Danny.
I was so very sorry to hear about what happened.
I'm sorry.
I invited Danny to come to Sweden. You know what she's been going through.
Christian says you've got this special week planned.
It's sort of a crazy festival. Special ceremonies and dressing up.
That sounds fun.
Unbelievable.
Welcome and happy midsummer. Skål!
What time is it?
Good trailer.
Yes.
Effective music.
That's the movie.
Yeah. I know I'd only heard it. I'm just one of those crazy people. Not crazy people. We've ragged on how trailers just give away everything these days, but I'll close my eyes now.
You and Max. Max is he's like, he said there's like a point in every trailer where he's like, okay, now it's time to close my eyes.
That's when, as soon as I realize what movie it is and if it's one I want to see.
Oh man.
So next we talk about how we'd rate it. So speaking of which, Tim, and speaking of how watching a trailer affects our viewing of it and how I avoid it, I'm a very sensitive moviegoer, I realize. And this is so sensitive.
Oh, Ryan, you can open up.
Well, I am, Tim. at the risk of totally embarrassing you too.
Oh, good. I can't wait.
But this was, in trying to rate this movie, is really hard for me because I'm like, I think it was for me kind of how I felt about Mad Max Fury Road, where upon the first 2 times I saw it, I was only able to love it in theory. I'm like, I loved everything that's happening right now, but it was only from this like intellectual standpoint of not being able to fully engage with the film. I was not being affected by it the way that you want, except for kind of maybe sparsely. And not until the 3rd time when I saw Mad Max Fury Road with just me and another person, black and chrome edition, was excellent. The special effects, the packed theater, all the things that were preventing me from getting into the first time finally went away. So, I mean, I was in my head a lot, and I think movies like this where there's so much expectation, I do that a lot too. And like I've said this a lot too, where movies that are movies where I end up loving them, I don't know it the first time, or it's not there at all the first time. But where I said, at the risk of embarrassing you, I have to say, which I loved as reactionary as you were during this and as into the movie as you were.
Took you out.
But it definitely kept me at odds a bit from being able to get into it.
I was wound up.
Tim was really wound up, guys.
It was like, I had this, I don't know how to explain it. I just constantly was like, oh, fuck.
Out loud.
No, here we go.
Say,
and I was like,
oh man.
I was like chuckling to myself a lot because I was like, this is going to get bad. And I was, oh, shit. Oh,
right.
No.
That was essentially it.
But there was, I mean, some of it was just that I actually, because of how, like, the impending doom and the fact that the characters are kind of almost they're oblivious in a certain way, it made it worse for me, where I was like, in a way that like a slasher, you kind of are like, why are you going over there? Don't go over there. And then you kind of are amused by it. I was in that place.
Well,
so sorry if I distracted you.
And that was obvious
coming off of me bitching about that dude.
Your specific reactions would support exactly what you said, because they are all in line of like, oh man, oh fuck, here we go, all that stuff.
Yeah, it was
but you had and it's also, this is less specific to you, but I think one thing I really like about this film and films like it are ones where the reactions one has aren't supposed to be one way or the other. Where like a perfectly appropriate reaction is to laugh or be horrified or be intrigued or some sort of mix therein. But like, I'm someone who the only things I think are weird period are thinking things are weird, if that makes sense. Like if something inexplicable or I haven't seen before or quote unquote odd weird happens, my reaction is like interest, or I don't have that initial kind of shock usually of like, what is this? Which I know is totally normal and most people have. But so for me, it's like I'm already in the mode of, I don't know, it's being effective as a horror movie, this horror movie. Sorry, I'm trying to, like, this is supposed to be the rating section. How do I?
Well, I'll just say one other thing, like, to give you a sense of where I was at. I just was having a couple days of, like, everything seemed like it was amplified around me. Yeah. In life, like other people's lives and, like, just my, like, things that I'm, like, working on or people I'm working with or friends or whatever. And so I felt like I was turned up already. Yeah. And then I got to this point because this movie, I was like, this is like, I mean, I watched Hereditary. I remember, I know it's not going to fucking like be nice.
It's not going to end in a picnic.
So I had this feeling of like, if we had been in my place watching it, I probably would have been standing up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I kept like rubbing my face where I was like, oh, fuck. oh fuck, like just this dread, and like, you know, like sometimes when you laugh when you shouldn't be laughing, like nervous laughter. That's what it was a lot of the time. I was like,
and like
shit.
I think of movies almost like you're going to another place in a sort of, you know, dimensional, to reference this film, psychedelic sense.
Sure.
Of where like I love. It's funny because, as I said, I appreciate that with you. And if we were going on some sort of intergalactic, interdimensional adventure together and looking at inexplicable things, I would...
Aren't we?
Yes. I would... Yes, that's what I'm saying. If I'm thinking of it in those terms, I want someone around whose reaction is laughter, you know?
Yeah.
While mine is kind of detached observation.
Did you hear the guy? There was a guy in the theater at a certain point that we'll get to, who actually stood up and was like, fuck this movie, and walked out of the theater.
Whoa!
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I was
Cool.
like, oh shit.
Awesome.
Got him.
That's like the best reaction you could ask for making a film
really,
like this.
Right? Okay,
So this is, again, got to give it a solid rent it, but it could easily grow into a buy it over time for its uniqueness in doing something kind of fresh, and uniqueness in tone, and I don't know, I feel like any sort of critiques that people have been having about length or blah blah blah, or I don't know, that stuff is all like, I don't even know whether I agree with it or not. It's just so not what I even care about in movies. I
Sure.
guess. So
yeah,
I think I liked it, honestly. As far as flavor wise, it appealed to me maybe a little more than Hereditary. Like, Hereditary, just as a horror film, I think, you know, as kind of like a under 2 hours. I think, is Hereditary under 2 hours?
I don't know.
But it's just as a solid horror film, I don't know, it's more effective or whatever. But this, I think, because it has sort of greater aspirations, maybe, it just intrigues me all that much more.
I feel similarly to you, although I think tonally and even visually, Hereditary is kind of more in a lane that I like.
Yeah.
But similar to Hereditary, I just don't know how much I want to revisit it. Mm-hmm. Like, I left Hereditary being like, I'm probably not going to watch that for a while. I watched it honestly, I think I watched it like 6 months later. But then when I think, I'm like, it's not a movie I'm going to be like, ooh, you know what would be fun to watch right now? Like, it's just not. And neither is this. So I'm like, that's what kind of keeps me from saying it's a buy.
Yeah.
But do I think it's worth or worthy of buying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a little like, I don't know, I'm not sure where that means I land. I might, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be in like 10 years when Aster has like 6 films under his belt. And if they're all kind of in this level of fuck, what the hell, and and like, wow, that's crazy. I might be like, you need to have all of these.
Yeah.
But so far, I don't think I would be a buy for Hereditary either. I'm 100% rent. So I think for this, I'm same 100% rent.
It's hard. Where I think we're kind of where you're saying, where it's like good enough to buy, but I would still
for
rent
me,
it. Yeah.
Like, do I want this to rewatch often?
Right.
No. But actually, to one sort of caveat, I would say to look at from a filmmaking perspective, yeah, there's a lot going on.
God, I would buy this over. Yeah, exactly. I think there is a spell going on in this movie that I definitely fell into.
Hereditary is 2 hours, 7 minutes.
Got it. Yeah, my friend who's a listener of the show kind of became obsessed with Hereditary and was someone who watched it a bunch, you know, kind of thing. And that's less because, but I
there's
guess
shit to pick apart.
I bring that up to say it's less like, oh, I it's not like a happy place to go to, but it's fascinating, it's interesting, I enjoy this experience for other reasons, you know?
Well, it sort of, to me, it's starting to beg the question with this particular filmmaker, and I think there are a handful of other people out there or from the past that have this same thing going on. The way that they're making the movie and telling the story is seemingly so complex, like there's so much going on, but I think we, as the sort of intellectual, analyzers of the movie, are giving it even more meaning than it would necessarily was intended. Like, I don't know that for sure, but it gives me that feeling of like, when you're in 9th grade or something like that, and you're in English class, and the teacher is saying, this story is about this, 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 and this, and here are the themes, and they're like breaking it down. And I remember just having that thought of like, but is it?
I think it's just a good...
And is that the intention of the author?
Well, I think if a movie explores conflicts interestingly, then it's just inherently there by the conflicts being there, because you have a dissolving relationship, Western foreigners interest in, an older, who's a foreigner to us, ritual.
Well, let's call this the summary.
Yes.
So we're both Rents.
All right. Rents, borderlines. I really need to see it again.
Me too. But not soon.
I know, I want to see it again if it's in
Dude,
theaters,
I had
though.
fucking the most fucked up dreams.
Really?
I had like a really fucking not bad, but like tumultuous night after watching
interesting because a lot of sort of their rituals and things in the film, and also based off of real life, some of the real life influences are these ideas of putting things under your pillow or doing yada yada to affect your dreams.
Well, it fucked me up.
All right, next section, officially, summary. So we got not so happy couple, Danny and Christian, who seems like they're about to break up, but Danny goes through a horrible tragedy, where her sister kills herself and their parents. And so Christian's like, maybe not the best time to break up with her anymore. Mm-hmm. And, or at least bring it up.
Never a good situation.
Right.
For anybody.
Or at least bring it up, their conflict. Right. So he's there, and then because of all that, brings her along, sort of obligatorily invites her to was going to be him and his buds going to Sweden.
The anthropology crew.
Yeah, they're grad students studying anthropology. And then what happens, Tim?
Well, this midsummer festival, sort of traditional festival thing, which only in this particular group...
Is it Pele or Pell?
It's Pele, but...
Pele.
Or, yeah, I think it's Pele.
Pele. Let's say Pele.
Pele. I actually knew a dude from Norway with that name. But
new.
I don't know where he is now.
I have some guesses after this film. No.
So they go to this. The reason they are going is because this festival only happens every 90 years, and it's on a commune, essentially, like a pretty hidden Swedish commune that is just not well known. It's not a known entity. And so the anthropology guys who are all trying to figure out what do you call it? Their
thesis.
Yeah, their thesis is going to be like, one of them is doing it on this sort of era of traditional ceremony things. Josh, yeah. And then Christian, the boyfriend of Danny, he doesn't know what he's going to do. And so they're all kind of going because they think this will be at the very least, their buddy who's also anthropology, or is he anthropology or is he just an artist?
Oh, Mark, the silly one?
No. Mark definitely is anthropology.
Oh, Pell. Yeah,
Pele or whatever is. It was unclear to me if he was part of the anthropology thing or he's just their buddy. Doesn't matter. He invites them to this thing, and for that reason, because they all think it'll be a wild thing, and he's excited to share this tradition of his family, essentially, with his friends.
Well, yes, in ways that...
In all of the ways.
we come to learn are more than they expect.
So really, once they get there, the big sort of thing is bridging the gap between them as the outsiders getting on board with how the insiders view this traditionalism.
Yep.
And whether or not they can bridge that gap, because from the outside perspective, they're like, whoa, this is weird and different. And, then it gets very intense.
Things get very intense with the first one, which is a ritual where the two elders at 72 years old jump off a cliff, killing themselves, and it's just part of this thing that they do. And then becomes a sort of psychedelic-infused daytime spiraling hell of, we have Danny and Christian sort of splitting up more and more, the sort of the villagers, the cultist, pulling them apart.
And then the sort of all the other outsiders, one by one, are starting to disappear.
Yep. And we see their fate after the second half,
and which kind of puts it into basically a typical kind of slashery style, where it's like people are just getting picked off.
And it's like,
but
well, what else is it going to be?
Right. So
I think that's good. That's good.
Yeah. I think the only other thing is that Danny gets kind of led through circumstance, or maybe not. Yeah.
Well, she's the most reluctant one, of course.
To become the May Queen. And she is...
Become the May Queen.
Yeah, she's definitely... For the most part, it's her story. But, like, we leave her a bunch of times. But we're seeing a lot of this through her eyes in the sort of, like, the psychedelic-induced states.
She's definitely the one that's easiest to sympathize with for many reasons.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. That's what Tim and I made of this film, summary-wise. Now, time to hear what he and I, oh so subjectively, thought worked about it. Can we do what worked?
Probably.
What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I mentioned, generally all the things that I think I could have been totally into. I just wasn't feeling it. But there was one moment that fully affected me.
When he ate the pube?
That worked for me. Oh, that worked for me, Tim.
I bet it did.
It was the upside down driving shot at the beginning. That visual effect was just so affecting to me it felt like, when it's cool if you're swimming underwater to swim upside down, and it's like, oh, the world's upside down all of a sudden. So having that road travel above you, and then the sort of like roller coaster nausea inducing of the flip itself, and then the return, like, it was just doing everything it was supposed to for me. I loved it.
Yeah, I really like that too. And it did a thing that that shot's, a shot that you see. It's sort of we're right side up, and as the car passes, you flip upside down. But almost always when you see it, it's over. Like, once the car passes, that's it. It just
I feel like I only see it kind of in a sort of more action-y car drive by.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think you're right. But yeah, man, just staying with it and then moving down the road upside down for that long, like, it completely shifted sort of your brain of how you, like, the shape of what you're seeing. Like, it became this kind of tunnel of the trees and the sky being like the downside.
Yeah.
Which was really cool and freaky and just disorienting. And I think that's like, it's also thematically speaking, specifically, like, a lot of the screenwriting books will talk about, like, when you break into Act 2, you are in the upside down world. And I'm just like, he's literally just doing that thing. He's just like, visually, what does that look like?
Right.
That's it.
Well, it's smart to contrast that too with them getting in the fields the first time and having what I think we were feeling, which is, this is pretty for all, despite we know it's impending doom. It's like, oh yeah, beautiful Swedish fields or whatever. Right. Here we are.
Yeah.
And kind of like, the effect of the disorientation. Like, I always think of your quote during our Calvaire episode where you're like, pigs are dogs are pigs, up is down is up,
Sure.
Up is down is up.
Yeah.
It's very important, I think, to do that in horror.
Yeah. I mean, so just to, I guess, preface this section, I don't think that I can really, there's so much that I think you can pull apart in this movie that it would be like 5 hours of us talking about it.
Well,
so I know that ain't happening.
Let's see. Let's get through what we can. We have a list.
I want to start at the beginning, the beginning, because the beginning almost to me in a way is like Ari Aster saying, here's Hereditary. I'm going to give you like almost a coda sort of feeling like, yes, that's what I did in the last movie with the death of the parents in the opening. And that sequence leading up to Danny finding out and like mourning and screaming, that all felt like Hereditary.
I think immediately visually. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Visually and contextually in the sort of the grief shit.
The parents. Yeah, totally.
And then the movie sort of switches over to, we're not going to do that. Like we're in a different movie. And that, I don't know how intentional that was, but that's the vibe I got. And I liked that it was sort of like, here's the real world, quote unquote, whether or not you want
a world.
Right. But whether or not you want to make a connection to how he depicted a world, it's like his world, Ari Aster's view of a real world, and they're similar to Hereditary in tone and all those things, whatever. And then moving into the new world of The Trip. And like, I really like that you get this sort of first act in this tone, and then once you leave it, once they go to Sweden, the movie looks so fucking different and so bright and cool. And I think that's important, right? To emphasize the fact that the sun barely goes down there, that it is this time of year, that we are in this other world, essentially. So all of that to me was really working just thematically and visually, of like, we're going from this place to this place, and it's different.
Well, okay, two things I want to say about that. First is like, if you're talking about what the world Hereditary is in, and a big part of that is it's a dollhouse within a dollhouse, you know?
Yeah.
It's a reality, or it's not. It's up in the air. It's a story, but it's not. It's the character's realistic, but it's all, just all that, again, not being on steady ground. And I think he did that, and maybe sort of less, the shots less sort of obvious or awe-worthy, but just as simple and subtle as we're looking at the stage. It was like a stage play, how the film starts, where it's like we see the pictures, the drawings, and that opens up. So that's very much is like, here's now a story being told kind of feel. And
were you able to take in much of what was drawn on that?
Oh my God, that's actually, you just reminded me. That was the second thing in the movie that actually really affected me, was the sun in the top right had this sinister face. So you had on the top left, like what maybe should have been a scary kind of skull moon type thing. And then the yin yang effect, the sun just had this creepy face.
So,
oh my God.
I'm pretty sure that if we had a picture of that thing tells the story. Yeah. Right? In, like you're saying, in the upper left where the skull sort of moon thing is, that's Act 1.
Yeah.
And underneath it, if I remember right, there's sort of almost like a Grim Reaper-ish type character, and then there's water, and then there are 3 people in the water with tubes coming out of their mouths, like they're drowning. Those clearly are Danny's parents and the sister who have asphyxiated.
Right. So to sort of like when we talked about this is on tangents here, but Qui-Gon, how we talked about the very specific feel by having the old paintings and telling the story of this tragedy, or being the means to tell the story of a tragedy, somehow made the association feel realer or have more gravitas in a way, like in a sort of inversely effective way.
Yeah.
I think that was going on here too.
Yeah.
And sorry, what was I? Yeah.
So, well, I was just thinking, if you now knowing the movie, you go back and you look at that painting or whatever it is, I guess it's like knitted or quilted or whatever. You would go, oh, right, that's this is that, this is that, and you would see it. But I don't think visually looking at it before you've seen the movie, you would get any. You wouldn't. I only remember the people underwater because because the next thing that happens is that, and I go, oh, right.
It's being effective too for being on that. Where does it start? Where does it begin? Meta level, the meta level of if in the movie we're seeing shots of these paintings. I don't know. What do we call those? I don't know. We keep referring to the same thing. Drawings. Like old drawings. Yeah, we see the drawings of like, I loved it seeing the drawings of the pube love ritual. Right. And then that plays out. Yeah. So it's like that is happening within the movie and is also
pube love ritual.
but you see what so the drawings are used as a device within the film and they're also used as a device for framing the film itself.
Yeah.
So that's that cool level.
It's just all around the way that this is constructed in that it's sort of obviously they did research into traditional things in Sweden or Scandinavian culture, and they then were like, okay, how do we make this, or even things that exist? For example, I'm sort of jumping ahead. Well, I'm very much jumping ahead. The death of the British couple, when we see I can't remember his name, when we see the guy in the chicken coop and he's hung up prone, and his back is flayed open and his lungs are out.
Simon.
That's an actual thing. That was an actual torture ritual from like, I guess I don't know, fucking.
I mean, I was going to get into all things of note, what are the real influences and not,
Sure. But I guess this is just to say that, like, clearly they did their fucking homework and research and are pulling real things. And then, I'm sure that to me helps the movie so much in kind of being like, it's not just some fantasy land. It's not just some made up thing. It's like all of this stuff is very close, if not literally, things that happened in
Well, it's like
human reality.
In order to take us to a next level, you're combining everything that does exist to take us to something that doesn't.
And I think that makes it fucking scary.
Right. So when you a while ago said this, you gave your spiel in the beginning of the movie, the first act, and I said I wanted to say two things in responses to that. Talked about the first thing. Second thing is you kind of mentioned like, well, where, it's hereditary into this next movie stylistically. I think that turn happens at a very distinct point and only further supports the idea that this is potentially like a story within a story or not real on some other level, or that this is still like a story.
Can I guess what it is?
Yeah, you know it.
Do I? Is it the door slam into the plane?
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That shot is amazing.
Overhead shot from the apartment, same set, overhead, and all of a sudden we're into the apartment, or the apartment bathroom entering to plane bathroom.
Yeah.
It was the same shot.
Yeah, it's a really effective and like, I don't know, but it lands really, really well. The fact that there's
nothing else in the movie like that, I think really highlights it.
Oh, that's interesting. You're right.
As if to say, this is a clear sort of, not quite as far as breaking the fourth wall, but sort of we're moving outside of the modes of like of the reality of the film,
right? Right.
To do something with that.
Yeah, it's what's that term? You have motivated and unmotivated camera moves. Mm-hmm. It's a seemingly, I guess it's motivated because it's following her, but it's out of reality. So it's sort of unmotivated in that sense.
But clearly motivated.
But motivated, yeah. It's just an interesting outside in kind of shot. And you're right, most everything else, despite the fact that there's psychedelic shit going on and effects or whatever, but most everything else is kind of like the camera's grounded in, a space and a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. One more thing about the first act. Once Christian has sort of, you can see that he's like, he feels trapped and he's going along. He's sort of like, well, now that this tragedy has happened, I'm in. They almost only show him in mirrors for the next like 2 scenes, which is really cool. Like Danny and him have kind of this fight, and he's shot just in a mirror. And then when they go over right before the cut into the plane, they go over to the other guy's apartment or whatever, and Christian is in the mirror in the background the whole time, which I don't really know what to take away from that other than it's interesting and cool, and I'm sure there's some reason to do that.
I didn't notice that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Specific moment therein that I really appreciated, or in this first act again, was like the moment where Danny, right before he enters, they're all talking about her, and like just getting to sit in that awkwardness of like you're clearly entering a room and they're just talking about you.
Yeah.
It just kind of made me be like, there's better ways out there, fellow humans, you know? Like,
well, I mean,
I'm not saying I have the answer.
No, I'm with you though, but this movie is really an exercise in like how to be a dick to somebody else. Like,
oh my God,
it just is. And like,
Christian,
the term, the gaslighting term that is now in our lexicon is this, like, just watching him gaslight her the entire fucking movie.
Okay, well, that's going to kind of, there's something, even if we're trying to go in order, there's some things which are throughout that I have to mention.
Totally.
Or a beginning to end thing, which is like, Christian, the boyfriend, he's like, total putsy gaslighting dude, right?
Yeah.
But here's what worked for me about that is I love like having that kind of person or character's end trajectory being an invalid in a wheelbarrow and then bear skin, and also someone who's this kind of like where his middle trajectory is like, I'm just trying to be open-minded. This is just this to have someone like be slapped in the face, so to speak, in the worst possible of ways.
Yeah.
Why does that warm my belly, Tim? It's horrible, but it's cathartic in a way.
It is, because we're surrounded by douchebags all the time, and sometimes we want to see them get their comeuppance.
Right.
Did you notice the painting over Danny in the first act when she's sleeping before they go over to the party?
It's the bear.
Is a little girl with her hand on the forehead of a bear kneeling down. Giant bear. That shit is...
Can we talk about that in...
really brilliant art direction.
Can we talk about that in things of note more?
Definitely.
Okay.
I just think even just on its surface from a visual, just somebody made that decision. And that's fucking... like, it's great. It's foreshadowing. It's all the things you want in like a deeply sort of thought out storytelling, like visual storytelling.
I think it's specific enough. It more than just a little foreshadowing and visual.
Sure.
That's what I want to get into. And things of note.
So okay, here we go. Second act. Acid. No, mushrooms.
You think that's what it starts? Yeah. Well, I mean, whatever. Acts. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. It's like they've arrived.
Well, I thought that was so smart because like it's you had to have a first like voluntary psychedelic scene in order for the later ones to sort of be set. We had to get a sense of how they were going to stylistically portray that before they actually did it.
Well, because here's the thing.
Or did it again.
If it allows anybody like myself who is like scared of psychedelics, like I'm just, it scares me, the idea. It allowed me to go, okay, most of them are not, they don't look at it the way I do. They're cool with it. They're like, yeah, let's do some mushrooms. That's fun. And Danny is the closest to the audience perspective in that group. And even she is like, yeah, no, okay, I'll do it now, right? And
I'd say she's also closest to the people who maybe approach them responsibly.
Yeah, probably.
Because the last thing you want to do is like have this sort of be this tension of taking, oh man, come on, no, but it'll be fun. We got to come up together. You know, like, no, like if someone doesn't want to do it.
Right.
And like to have her be like that clearly kind of,
she knows
trying
better.
to be nice lie, you know, of like, oh no, it's fine. We'll just do it. No, I'm really, I'm okay. Really, like that facade level you shouldn't be going into for this thing. It's all set and setting, baby.
Yeah.
Psychedelics. And that wasn't the right set to be going into because she had to run into a bathroom and hide.
Right. But I mean, that set the stage really for me to get on board with who they are, which then allows the rest of the behavior of all of the characters in the movie to sort of make sense. That they're all kind of in the mentality of like, yeah, let's try this. Let's see where this goes kind of thing. Whereas like, if you put me, Tim, into Sweden, into that scenario, very quickly I would have been like, something's fucking off about this whole thing. And I'm like, we need to figure out what and how to get the fuck out of here. Not this sort of singular, everybody's on their own little path thing that happens in this movie.
Well, here's though what
and allows them to get picked off.
Something that really worked for me was how scary Pele is when you really think about it.
Dude.
Because Tim, let's say you are in that situation, you've been friends, let's say good friends with this guy for a couple years. Like, let's say you are worried, concerned, but you have a good friend of yours assuring your worries away. Would you still be like, let's figure it out?
I don't know. I mean,
because that would force you to then go to someone else and say, hey, I think we shouldn't trust our friend.
Right. No, that's, I think, what makes the trajectory of the story so effective is because it is like, fuck, what would you do? And I understand why they're going in the way they're like, their point of view makes sense.
And
they're getting reassurances from elders who you're sort of like inherently supposed to respect, even though you just saw some crazy shit. And then even that, like that argument of the two Brits, when the elders jump off the cliff and kill themselves, that argument is so well kind of quelled by the main woman who sort of is like, listen, like you obviously weren't informed properly, but this is important to us, and it would be an honor if when I'm 72, I got to do this ceremony because it's such an important thing to us. And it's this gray area in the same way that Christian's behavior towards Danny, it's on its surface, yeah, it's okay. What he's saying is true and sometimes has some sort of basis in like logic. It's just but he's still fucking gaslighting.
He's latching on to these beliefs way too quickly. There's no room for error. That's his sort of.
But the community is also gaslighting the outsiders.
Right.
So this sort of theme of like essentially telling somebody that what they are concerned with or what they view as maybe not okay for them, that they're crazy or that they're off by believing it that way, that's a continuous sort of reinforced thing throughout the movie, which is great.
That's a self-gaslighting is, I think, that's not the term. Like, because what you're saying is this community of people, it's sort of a stuck in their ways mode, and that's a kind of
but they have methods to convince the outsiders who are questioning
it's like
to keep them chill.
A sort of running theme in it that I really, really liked was the idea of, you know, like what they say about the psychedelics, you're open to outside influences, and like we have this person who's intentionally inbred to be open to outside influences, kind of thing.
And on its surface, that's sort of like, oh, that's an interesting, and I can get behind that idea. But then you realize the methodology is fucked.
Well, what's terrifying to see is how like looking at kind of the trajectory of their life cycles that they believe in and enforce, which is the first 18 years you are a child, then next 18 years to 36 you're on your like Mormon mission, you know, abroad, and then next is
you're a worker,
and And then you go return to the village.
Right.
And then after that is you're the wise elder until you're 72.
Yeah.
And don't deserve to live.
Right.
Or go out with honor, kind of thing. So to have Pele, to think that he's gone abroad for that many years to hopefully get an influx. And I wonder if this does happen. You have people like leave the religion, ideally, almost like how Mormons kind of, do. But to think that despite being gone and around these sets of friends for 18 years, he never left the ideology of his village.
Well, I think the strength of the fact that he's living in an era where the 90-year ceremony is at his sort of prime age.
You're right. That's important. That's probably what was keeping him going this whole time. Was, I get to be alive for this.
That's right. Because 90 years. That's the odds that you're going to catch that.
Right.
Are not great.
I actually wrote that down as that was specifically terrifying, having Pele. He's justifying everything by saying, but it's only every 90 years.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so let's get into... okay. So this was all to say that the psychedelics, that scene of depicting psychedelics was very effective. Also, just the performance of what's her name?
Danny?
Yeah, what's her first name? Her real first name?
Florence.
Oh, yeah, Florence. Yeah, she's great. But
Florence.
Depicting and in her performance and in filming what it feels like to have a fucking panic attack, man, it's so unsettling. I mean, the whole movie's unsettling, but like that specific thing was so fucking like locked in for me.
Right. And to think it's just so interesting how in film it's all about perspective, because who also was having a panic attack was the goofy friend, the almost comic relief, Mark, because that was kind of in an almost we see it relatable way of like situations like that. Just lay down with me, and kind of I'm just gonna everything he's going through. You could tell this movie from his point of view. Imagine that, and we'd be laughing at this girl running away and freaking out.
Sure, yeah,
like his perspective.
But I think that the honing in on that feeling of, when you're having a panic attack and getting, it just, to me, it was effective in getting us on board with like this state of like, I'm a little bit out of control. I'm being overwhelmed. Like all these things are really, really effective. Like the visual of the grass growing out of her hand. If I saw that, like even, I've never done a psychedelic, so I don't really know how I'd react, but if I were to see that, I would not be okay with it. Like it would really freak me the fuck out. Like that body horror, it's body horror. I was like, oh no, I know it's just grass, but and then, even the tree, like her looking at the tree and then throughout the movie, the what would you call that
breathing
effect? It's sort of breathing thing that I love. It's such a fucking cool effect.
That had me, that first one when she looks up at the tree and just the bark has...
Yeah, it's like...
I'm like, yep.
Moving around. I love that.
Right.
I was right in. But it is really unsettling, which that's the point. Like, they've accomplished it.
Well, what it is it's potentially overwhelming. You can either be accepting to it or overwhelmed with it. But as again, like clearly set and setting... This was a couple, who probably should not be messing with psychedelics with what is going on between them unless they want to, like, really go through something together.
Sure. Right. And they definitely are not in it together.
Right.
Like, they're on different fucking planes.
That separation, that's what sort of causes that anxiety, is if, like, it's the stuff, like, forces you to sort of lose that sense of disconnect. You feel a sort of impending, we are all, not separate thing going on. So if you try to fight against that by being like, I'm suspicious of my boyfriend or vice versa, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting point though, because through sort of as the trajectory of the whole movie, that theme of like, you're a part of this family. And I think, for a while I was thinking, why why have the family death in the beginning other than to just sort of isolate her? Like, what's the broader kind of connection to that? But it comes around in the end of the what are they called? The commune, whatever.
Right. Well, because she comes
the
around.
Swedes. Right. The Swedes reinforce this idea for her to convince her to come around of like, we're together. We do everything together. Like nobody's...
Their seduction works.
It is.
Crowning her the May Queen.
Dude. And by the way, so the May Queen thing, does anybody believe that she won that just because she won it? Like, no fuck, no.
Honestly, that's what I wanted to say going into it, but something about some of those hits seemed pretty genuine. And I'd argue too that I think they could have or would have killed her what they wanted, like aside from the May Queen thing. I actually would argue...
I think that Pelle decided... Oh, so here's a clue, yeah. And if I knew Swedish, then we could know the answer. But in the very little German that I know, and the similarities between German and English and some of the Scandinavian languages, when Pelle walks up in the very first scene, they go through the sun... what do you call that? Backdrop thing that they've built, which is really cool. They walk through there and they meet Pelle's dad. And Pelle says in Swedish to him, he uses the words for, I think it's for beautiful and for fantastic and for world. And I think what he's saying is, I've found the perfect person. Mm-hmm. Like this girl is the perfect person. She's the one for this ceremony. It was I'm not using the right words, I think, exactly, but what I pulled out of like my very slight knowledge of that linguistic stuff was like, I think they're talking about her, and maybe there was a shot that implied this too, and those words made me go, oh, they've decided like that was his job.
I feel like, though, it's less...
Bring us a May Queen.
I don't think it's less like it was an actual sort of step-by-step, totally deliberate thing, but a sort of middle ground of like and sort of getting at a horror point of our relationship with fate and is it real or not, and just sort of the idea of to want or believe something so much and it coming true and what effect of believing it had it and made it and coming true kind of thing.
But they've also the commune has made decisions. Like they clearly decide that Christian is the right mate for the redhead. Right.
I thought the redhead girl decides that.
Maybe, but like
because they're like she's taken an interest in you.
But they have that conversation about like you're the perfect sort of specimen for this. Like your genes are good for impregnating her. Like they literally say that.
Right.
So it's stuff like that, which it's like there's a vague set of goals, and then they've made decisions based on the reality of who's been brought in. Oh, you're good for this. They know the ceremony. It's like it's not a secret to them what the ceremony is. They have certain things they want to accomplish. One is get a mate for. Well, maybe that's not part of the ceremony.
I don't know. I think it worked.
It just these things are they're working for a purpose,
and I think that purpose is sort of getting the idea across of like it's scary to think of that things do just work out for people, for these kinds of people.
Right, because on the flip side, Mark didn't fucking intend to, like, they couldn't have known that Mark was going to piss on the elder tree and that was going to be, like, seal his fate.
Yeah.
But if they had already decided that they're going to kill him, that was just like, okay, well, fuck this motherfucker. Like, well, let's kill him this way. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's symbology or symbolism to each of the deaths too, which I think is really cool.
And while you mentioned all the deaths, I want to say what worked for me is how all the deaths, the foreigners, were off screen. I thought that was really, really effective.
The only one that is pretty much kind of on screen is Josh. Like Josh gets
getting hit,
but we don't see the hit. We just see him fall.
Right.
So you're right. There's still this kind of ambiguity. You don't really know who's the person doing the hitting or the killing. which is cool.
They didn't,
because it's all of them,
right?
Right.
It was
like
still left
in its way,
in shadow, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, because they just cut. Oh no, I guess that shot of the oracle is later when Christian is having the sex ceremony.
It was interesting.
Anyway, which
how
is freaky.
Something toward the middle of the movie, I think one of my favorite moments, which is interesting to think when you think it's a daytime horror film, was the nighttime nightmare of them abandoning her.
Yeah.
And like Mark looking at the car, kind of like laughing at her almost. That scene got to me too, as a very specific kind of horror.
There's also in that same vein,
Abandonment.
where is Danny when this happens? She's in a bathroom, and for a flash of an instant in the mirror behind her, her sister with the hose
Wasn't
in her
that
mouth.
the first one when she runs into...
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, yeah, all of those sort of like flashes of her state are really smart because they're reminding us that she's still coping with this really fucked up thing. So when the elders fall onto the rock later, we see her seeing her sister up against the rock with the hose in her mouth. And then the two elders are her two parents.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is just, I think what's the strength of Aster, one of the main strengths of Aster, is continuing to reinforce a state of mind of a character for the audience and like getting us on kind of that same fucking frequency.
Plus her performance, oh man.
It's incredible. Like it is fucking mind-boggling.
Right.
How good she is.
I think that's why we sympathize with her so much, is because she's a realistic portrayal of like, we see her trying to figure things out.
Right.
Versus we got her dopey boyfriend just kind of like putzing
along for the
one
ride
moment to the next, you know?
Yeah. She's, well, and you know, another thing, just casting somebody who's an incredible actress and not worrying about, you know, these fucking body standards in Hollywood that exist, you know, like she's not your prototypical fucking, what do you even call that? Like, ingenue sort of body that has been around for 50 years of like, the wayfish sort of wayfish or curvy sort of thing. She just looks like a person. Like a normal human being that exists in the world.
Well, then I guess that's my type, because I thought totally like, oh man, they made sure to get an especially attractive person for this.
Just for example, to counter, you know, to give you a sense.
She does make the perfect May Queen, I think, is her look.
but she's not the girl. I can't remember her name. Jesus, the girl in fucking the new Quentin Tarantino movie who's playing Cheryl.
Yeah.
Teagues. Or Cheryl Ladd? No. What is the fucking... What? It doesn't matter. You know who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows who I'm talking about and yelling at me to the name. But she's not that, right? She's not sort of a quote-unquote 5'10" wayfish, but like curvaceous blonde model. And they could have done that. Or they could have done Natalie Portman, right? Like there's these sort of standards that exist in, you know, in Hollywood or in our world of like how and who your lead should be. And they obviously picked her for the fact that she's an incredible fucking actress and didn't not pick her because she didn't meet this bullshit standard of body type. And I think that's great.
I would just argue that I think I would think of the filmmaker and the filmmakers. You're speaking as if there's a default expectation to do this first, and then they're intentionally usurping it. Of like, no, we aren't going to cast this kind of person. We are going to cast this kind of person.
Not exactly.
Okay.
What I mean is in the machine that is making a big budget movie.
Right.
You have a bunch of voices, and a lot of those voices will often be the ones being like, I think you should cast this person because they fit into an idea.
Right. I'm just saying, as rather than it being, you aren't saying it's deliberate. You're more just saying this is how it ended up. But I think more so than these being deliberate choices are just kind of like I don't know, filmmakers nowadays, our peers or whatever, are just, their default is oh yeah, like mine, when you're describing that right now, like I didn't even think of how this person maybe doesn't fit these classic standards or whatever. Like for me, it's just like, oh wait, no, she was just
Let me put
it
I'll put it a different way. This girl comes in. The director is like, she's fucking great. I love her. There's a producer standing there going, yeah, she is great, but, you know, she's kind of just normal looking.
Right.
There's that voice exists no matter what. It existed probably before she even got the audition, right? Like somebody in the process is looking in that way, and and because that is the standard, somebody else, maybe it's the director, maybe it's somebody else in the production, has to say, we're not doing that thing necessarily, let's not focus on that.
I just think that's, I mean, I think that just feels cynical to me nowadays. I think there is it is obviously cynical, but I think nowadays, like, even you have like Margot Robbie, that's her name,
right? Thank
like
you. She's great. I have nothing against her.
It makes sense I've only seen the trailers, but like she's in Wolf of Wall Street, right? And is that her? And anyways, actresses like that, they're deliberately being used for that look. Like it makes sense to have someone with that look.
But they're often also being used for roles that like there's no like.
No, I'm not saying that doesn't still happen. I just saying I don't think I just think there's more filmmakers. There's also plenty of emerging existing filmmakers who don't fall under that trap.
I think now there are.
Yeah, right.
But I think that's kind of my point. We're entering into a time where we're shedding this standard that is a bullshit standard and has been for the last 50 fucking years.
That is all I'm saying, and I just want to emphasize.
And I think it's great.
When you can see
it's working for me, Ryan.
Great, but you can see why when you first presented the idea without that clarification, how it sounded like you were saying it was still a default to assume that.
I think it is largely still.
It's still a problem, yes.
A prominent factor in filmmaking. But yes, we're moving away from it, or certain people are, and that's good.
Yeah.
There we go. So the end. Okay, so having said all of that, tangentially,
what about the middle of the people jumping off the cliff?
So I think you would you say that that's sort of the moment of the oh fuck moment?
Yeah, as far as there should be, right. That was the clear turning point, I think, for them and us.
Yeah. The gratuity of it, I understand why you make it so graphic.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to talk about that.
I didn't want to look at it. And I
think that's the point.
But I'm on the fence of how, I don't know.
Okay, here's why I think it was so important to show it, because the actual, yes, there's the visceral fear that strikes you, or a discomfort that strikes you with that, clearly, the horror that strikes you. But I think what actually, like, why it works so effectively as like a get under your skin horror thing is because the context of that horrificness is people justifying that, saying this is to have people coming at it, like, because we can almost get behind, like, in life, you know, thinking of death as something that's beautiful, or like when we think of, like, you know, not a Braveheart, but that Viking thing of like the body's going off and shooting the arrow and it goes up in flames at sunset, you know, beautiful. We can get behind that. So to have this line being there of where people are treating this as a beautiful given ritual, and then having the extent to be like, yeah, but this is what it looks like. How can you call this right?
Right.
And they do. And that's that horror.
Yeah, and it becomes a paradox.
Right, exactly. Of like, dude, like that, him jumping and just like, oh yeah, the seeing the legs break that way.
I was like, why'd you jump that way, dumbass?
Right, and then as if that's not enough, maybe because he didn't want his face defaced like the woman.
Yeah.
But, and then to have his like, okay, if that's not obvious enough, there's something here we should talk about, guys. They come in with a hammer And it's just because it's a ceremonial hammer that it's okay.
Right, exactly.
And that's the horror for me. And I think it would be a lot less effective in that sense if we hadn't seen it. And also the fact that other deaths are off screen and we get the glimpses of the gore. Oh my God. Like I loved it when they were wearing the mask of the dude. Like they come in wearing the face of Mark.
Oh my God.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, you have that. But as far as that sort of overt and shocking as the deaths, it's isolated to that.
Well, and I think part of what it's doing too is, and the whole movie is doing to a certain degree, is it's saying we have these ideas, these norms of what is okay or what's humane, you know? And like we as a species do really fucked up things to animals, right? And we think, oh, but it's a humane thing, right? Like the way that's
they
done.
Think it's messed up. We put our elderly in horrible homes.
That's right. So there's that whole other side of like, what does it mean? Like, what is humanity? You know, and how do we view it? It's all kind of fucking subjective.
I mean, you know, I don't think factory farming is humane. I don't think
right,
and I don't think. I think that's not get too off topic, but I think that's a misnomer to say there's a humane way to kill someone or something, an animal.
That's my point. Is that the
it's humane slaughter. It's a humane murder,
right? And the commune people are effectively making that same argument.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, but this is a great honor.
But what does it mean? That's, again, maybe this is kind of the paradox, but like, what if those people who killed themselves, though,
if they believe it? I know.
They thought they were,
but they obviously, one of them did and one of them didn't, because he fucking shit the bed. You know what I mean?
Okay,
he was like, I don't know.
Well, this is similar enough
I love all of that.
This is similar
so
enough.
Fucked up.
This connects to jump ahead to the ending, which I loved similarly to that. That transition of like, you feel like, I'm talking about the transition of feeling like someone's excited to be killing themselves because of their belief system into when the reality of the situation hits, all of that is out the window. So the living villagers being burned alive.
Yeah, Igmar, I think, is the brother of Pele.
That was one of them?
He's one of the two.
So basically, it's like you see them sitting there smiling, looking at each other when the barn's set on fire. But then as soon as the flames hit them, no, all that is out the window and just forces us to go, really, guys? You bought into this thing that thinking it's okay.
That the fucking yew tree or whatever it was, sap that they got put in their mouth was going to make them not feel anything.
It's like, you know who'd agree with us here is what's her face from Audition. There's truth in pain.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, even that moment is sort of, it really is to this point of like, you're being fucking deceived. You're being told. I think actually the big underlying thing that I take away from the whole movie is the lie that you are either told and believe or that you tell yourself and continue to believe. And that lie, I mean, there's a billion of them in the movie, but like that thing of like, I'm gonna ignore either my instinct or my impulse or my like objective truth of what's going on around me or what's being said. Like, it doesn't matter if somebody says, hey, this is our tradition. You still don't like what you just saw.
Yeah.
You get to have that. And that's sort of the quintessential part of gaslighting of like, somebody else is telling you how to feel and what your reality is. That's fucked up. It's not okay.
I think that telling almost personified, as this is something I loved in this movie, was it happened a few moments, is it's everything you just said. It's playing off that inherent fear of like the fire, whether it's the fire moment or when she discovers her boyfriend having sex, or when what is the other one? There's one earlier too, but when you have the villagers reacting with mimicking their emotions.
That is an amazing thing.
So when they're all burning up inside, just as a reminder to the audience, when they're all burning up inside and everyone outside is screaming the same way they are, it feels like, to me, it's like, it's sort of an ultimate disrespect. It's like you're an insect getting stepped on somehow.
I think there's an opposite end of that too, though. It is what happens in mass hysteria. It's what people get on board as the collective group if they're all doing it as one, we jump on board more easily. We're so prone to that kind of thing. If the group is agreeing and we're the singular outside of that, we are so much more likely to just get on board. I mean, there's all these like social experiments about this, right? It's like people form, you have a bunch of people who are in on it. They form a line outside of a closed door in public, and people who are not part of the experiment will just start lining up with them, because they don't want to not be a part of the group. And so they're taking that idea to this crazy amplified place of like when the elder, fails at killing himself and he's moaning, they all start moaning along with him. And it seems like, are they mocking him, or are they all are they feeling they're becoming one with him?
That's it.
And that's that ambiguity of like, what the fuck is happening? Because
it's like, okay, it's the fear and like they're saying and almost convincing that they're feeling his emotions and being one with him, but they aren't the ones dying.
Exactly. And that, I think the most poignant and moving moment that it does that is when Danny has seen Christian having sex and she's sort of screaming and moaning, and they take her into the other barn, and they get around her and they're like holding her and they're doing it in rhythm with her. There's a point when it's sort of like, I almost feel like Danny's like, I guess it's okay then, because everybody's doing this along with me. Like my grief is now lessened in some way because they're grieving with me. It's
interesting because like in real life, all we really want, if we're in a horrible state, we aren't trying to get a solution from someone when we're talking to them. We just want to be felt. That's all we want. When someone says, how are you doing? It's not, oh, how are you doing when your family just died? It's, I'm trying to feel for you here.
Actually have empathy.
Right. So to have something that feels like it's that taken to extreme, yet be the actual inverse of what we really want.
Right.
There's that's where the horror, I think, lies.
Yeah, it's really off-putting to me.
Yeah.
It's scary because I feel like that's, it's almost a weird broad commentary on people just following the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, it's a
cult. It's a cult, right? Exactly. I mean,
but thousands of years old.
But the world is doing the same thing too.
Yeah.
And so to see it in this micro way and then be like, oh wait, we're all kind of in that at times. You know what I mean? Like we're subject to the quote unquote talking heads. It's like that's happening all the time. People so I think that's what makes it so unsettling and it is horror. It is the horrors of humanity in like the tiniest of way that is also the fucking broadest of way. So yeah, dude. What's next?
Ending. You've touched on it, but
the whole sequence.
So whole ending, meaning I want to start with at least the dance or where it kind of kicks in.
Yeah, I think it kicks in with the drinking of the punch, right? Or the tea or whatever. The pre-May Queen ceremony.
Him getting taken away to... Yeah.
So, yeah. That, man, it's a long sequence, too. It is really upsetting and disturbing. Because the tone and the impendingness of it is so fucking intense.
They've fully fallen into the fog of this world. We've kind of lost sense of time with them almost too. Like at first, what was a strange kind of what's going on with this dinner here when they're standing up, sitting down at the same time, that's all of a sudden been normalized for them. So they can be taken a step further in their insane rituals, so...
It's so fucking manipulative, too.
Yeah.
They've been given these little kernels to be like, everything's cool. We're going to give you what you want. Hey, Christian, you want to do your thesis on us? Totally, we'll do that. I know your friends are disappearing.
Or actually, what's more effective is, you know what? It took a lot of doing, but we're going to let you do it.
Right.
It's like, oh, yeah, great.
It's like some sort of prize you've won.
And I'll tell you, that's what con artists do from having been involved with one.
Yes, definitely. That is the fucking con. It's so fucked.
I loved her descent into the involvement / acceptance of all that. Or from her point of view, an ascent. Or maybe from our point of view, seeing that she's actually relieved of the burden of the relationship and their family's death for the first time. We can't disagree with that being a sort of ascending in terms too. But at what cost? Quite the cost, Tim.
Not if she doesn't have anybody to go back to.
So
she's just going to live her life out there.
It happens, right. It happens like when she accepts the dance, when she's, in the mode, as they put it, of the psychedelics opening her up.
The moment when she starts speaking Swedish.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that.
That is like, oh no, we're in fucking trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think they're just speaking gibberish, right?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But my impression was that maybe they're just, because they're on the trip, they think that they're now communicating without even saying real words, which I kind of thought was like, oh no.
Right.
Like, she's fucked.
Right.
Like, she's crossed over and now we're like, there's no coming back.
I don't want to, this is way out of the realm of anything, but there's, I feel like from my research in that state, the idea of some sort of extrasensory communication is not at all implausible.
Implausible.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's entirely plausible.
Yeah. No, I bought it if that's what they were trying to say.
That thing about like that, I think that's what plugs you in too, is it's totally true. And psychedelics being like, you are open to a state, like, okay. So it's like, God, used in that manipulative way.
Right.
God, wait, was this the things of note that I had? Okay. Okay. The dancing, Tim. I loved, everything I just said. That was an expression of what I loved about it. I think it's like, I feel like there's in Western society, this isn't, across the board. I'm speaking generally. I feel like if someone is at peace with their death and that exudes from them, like in their passing, days, whatever, it's a lot of a sudden the default is people's reaction is to think they're like crazy or that there's something wrong. And I think that's messed up in itself.
Sure.
I think that's actually better. I think that's something that we've lost. And I think actually speaking, I've seen studies like psychedelics being, mushrooms given to people, they're cool, with their death. They've accepted it in a way. But I think this is just another kind of fear point of just here we have just the idea of accepting death can almost be like a sort of a scary thing in itself. Well,
because it's pointing at
death,
the people who are not dying.
Yeah.
The people who are not dying are going, everything I'm built to do, I'm programmed to not die.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's flying in the face of a very primal thing.
Like
that's why we watch horror films.
Right,
though.
but it's
because
like,
it taps into that.
Here there's a difference between a funeral and a memorial. Like, funerals are morose and raining. Memorial are life celebrations. Sure. They're still sad, but they're also, can allow for happiness and gratefulness.
Yeah, This is it's flipping it a bit.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, to think if you're coming from that Western unhealthy extreme to then be put in this situation, it's like you could get why she can almost get on board with it, as
yeah, but they had to put her through a bunch of hoops to get her there.
No, and
manipulative hoops, like psychedelic, like putting her in a completely different state, manipulating and lying and fucking like winding her around, taking her away from when Christian is fucking somebody else. Like, they know what they're doing. That's why it's insidious.
Right. But I'm just saying that I'm trying to recognize that things are scary when there is a truth in it. It doesn't mean it's right in itself or that it's fully okay, but it's finding that truth in it and then being able to exploit that.
Yeah,
that was going on, and that was just a long way to say I think that's why that was so.
You're right
effective.
too, because even Well, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, it's all a fucking setup. Yeah. Once they've decided, whenever this happens, whenever they decide that she's going to be the May Queen, because that decision has to happen at a certain point.
I'd argue against that too, if you want to.
But I'm just saying, at some point they have to decide it. Let's just say she wins, and that's where it's decided.
Okay.
That I'm willing to concede that, although I don't believe that's the case. That's fine. That's my interpretation. But even then, once they've decided that, they then know, okay, we've also decided that Christian is going to have this sex ceremony. And since those two are together, we need to separate them. And then when she comes back, we know that ultimately, since she's the May Queen, she's going to have to make the decision whether or not to kill Christian or one of the villagers. And so we better put her in a position to maybe find out that Christian is fucking somebody else. That's a manipulation, right? They could have hid that from her completely. They're completely in control of all of this, but they didn't. They walked her past the barn that Christian is fucking in, and when she says what's going on in there, they're like, it's not for you. Wink, wink. You know what I mean? Like, that's all a part of the fucking manipulation. So of course, when she goes to look, they don't grab her and say, no, seriously, you shouldn't do that. They're like, oh, there she goes. I guess we can't control her.
I don't know. Again, in the moment I was reading it, it could have been a little differently.
I'm saying now, stepping back, to me, all of it looks like a fucking it's all part of the plan. Yeah. Like that they set, it's all a setup because they want the ceremony to go the way they want it to. Right? Like there's the only people that they allow to lose, quote unquote, in their ceremony is Igmar and the other dude who are volunteers. They volunteered to die. You know, everybody else, like two of them are just fucking mannequins. I mean, right? Like they're symbolic.
Like, I agree, of course, that there's the few of them that had to be killed for that was their plot, part of the ritual. Mm-hmm. I just think as far as...
You mean the outsiders?
Yeah. I just think they were going to do that regardless of... I don't know. I think a lot of that, even though they easily could have manipulated it, I also look at it as just as viable that there was happenstance / impenetrable idea of fate within that.
So the reason I have this point of view is because it's scarier and more horrific to think that it's all part of the plan and a manipulation, and that makes me feel good.
For me, it's horrific that they would just have a sort of trust in a greater power to have it play out a certain way, and it does.
Sure.
Here's the thing. It was going to play out no matter what because of their initial manipulation.
Right.
But having it have the beans and gravy on top of it is like where they let go and the trust and hey, it worked out better than they could have hoped for.
Okay, so let's talk about I guess we've kind of covered it, but like the sex scene is fucking wild.
So I have a
His
list.
performance is good.
Tim, this is what I said earlier talking through it. So I have a list of moments I love just to list if we didn't hit them. And I call the sex butt push.
Yeah, for sure.
You said it out loud. Get it in there. You were like with the woman who came up and pushed him.
Yeah, get it in there.
Yeah, you were like with the woman,
funny.
Like, yeah, just get it in there.
Yeah,
like,
come on, man. Fucking, why are you hesitating? Dude, the moment when
for me, that was like horrific. That moment is the idea of being that manipulated when it's like, let me be, like,
dude, that whole ceremony thing is so fucked up. Like, I really love this moment of like where the redheaded girl, the virgin, let's call her, is clearly like she's having an experience herself, and she looks back at the people she knows.
Yeah.
And I would say sort of the most attractive, I guess, maybe 40-ish year old, like motherly, like pretty mother steps forward and like holds her hand and then holds Christian's hand at the same time and is like looking at Christian. It's sort of this like motherly reassurance thing going on. That was so fucking weird and fucked up.
I think that's also what's going on is they are instilling the the birth, let's say, the conception. They're using magic, quote unquote, intention, the power of intention.
Right. Yeah, all of that. Ooh, man. What do you think of his bloody wiener? Did you love
was
it?
distracted by you saying we see a lot of wiener in this movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good touch.
Yeah.
Because it's
I'm glad they went there and just said, here you go.
Right.
What else? We sort of talked about, but the background and the trees and everything breathing, like the flowers breathing on her, her crown.
And what was you saw a face?
Oh yeah.
So was it like a big face?
So I would say in the screen, it was probably, man, I would say it took up a good portion of one of the thirds of the shot. Wow.
So I wonder,
it's in the forest, and it's very clearly it's sort of that green man.
Yeah.
You know, the green man is sort of the...
That's what I was going to say, and I kind of came across it looking up Midsummer stuff.
Yeah, the green man is like, I don't remember exactly, but it's an entity. It's like an, what do they call those? Not an, shit, what's the word? Swamp Thing is one of these.
Oh, yeah.
What is the fucking word? An
Golem?
No, it's
elemental?
an elemental.
Yeah.
I think the Green Man is like an elemental figure in, I don't know what cultures, to be honest.
Right.
But it's this forest face fucking entity.
So cool. Well, if I had seen it, that would have worked for me.
It was big and there. I was like, whoa, that's just somebody's face. Now it's camouflaged, obviously, because it's in the fucking trees, but it's really there. It's so cool.
I want to see it again just for that.
So all of that stuff, and even like when they're at the final table, well, it's not the final table, it's the feast table, and she's got her crown, and the chair she's in, like the fucking leaves are kind of crawling around her and like moving with her. All that shit, like the stuff that's on the table, they cut away to reality like 2 or 3 times, and it's like fucking rancid meat with like flies around it. But then in her kind of vision of it, it's almost like cakes in the
meat cakes
sort of in the shape of like humans. It's very like cool and weird. It's got, a torso kind of is one of them. And like one of them's like, so like all that design shit and the visuals of that, I mean, the whole movie, but it really fucking tops out for me there, where it's just it's so fucking, everything you're seeing is like, whoa, dude, there's so much.
Okay, and so the ending moment, I was talking to a friend of ours, and he was just like, yeah, when it ended, it's the moment where she's smiling, it just left me with a feeling of like, okay, kind of thing. Or like, as if it was...
It's the darkest thing that could happen.
Right. I guess I didn't think it was that okay. I was pretty...
No.
I thought it was pretty powerful to have her be on board with it all.
Dude, even right before that moment, when she's that huge flower dress that's basically up to her fucking neck.
I loved that.
And the crown is amazing. And then
put her in that.
There is a shot from the ground with the house burn, or whatever, the barn thing burning in the background, and her in the foreground, and it's a low to high, and she's like almost like a wounded animal, kind of like trying. I mean, it's just like the struggle of being in that flower thing. She's sort of gesticulating around in the shot, and she almost has, it's like horns are of the crown in the fire behind her, and it's animalistic, and it is such a fucking beautiful shot. That whole, just the design of all of that blows my mind, of how fucking intensely pretty and horrific it is at the same time.
I missed the moment, apparently, like when I was reading the summary, and I knew it happened, but I just missed the moment where she was the one who selected Christian. How did that play out? Because I feel like that would have worked. That idea works for me. But how did the moment look?
You don't see the selection. You don't see her decision. You see her contemplating the decision. It's posed, right? Like the elder says, "Here's the deal."
I think I thought that Christian had already been selected.
No, they say you have a choice between this dude here. He's one of our guys. He's the 9th, or Christian.
Got it.
And there's a very long sort of back and forth of her staring at Christian and Christian staring at her.
I remember that.
Right? That whole thing is just her contemplating what her decision is going to be. And the only way we know that she chose Christian is the next scene is them opening the bear up and wheeling Christian into the bear room.
So good. So good.
And you go, oh, she chose him.
What is it when they see the bear for the first time? Oh, there's a bear. Yep.
Yeah, they're like, bears exist.
All right, so we didn't miss it. Okay, in the moments that worked for me, I had listed, I mentioned the wearing skin face, sex butt push, love story drawings, dudes screaming when burning. Oh, okay, so the 3, didn't mention, the one guy's strung up and you see the lungs still breathing.
Yeah, dude, what the fuck? So that's the thing I was mentioning. That's an actual thing. It's called a blood eagle. And it's an old torture from, I don't know, way back when.
Right. And
that's fucked.
And so
why are humans so fucked up? Somebody thought of that. Right? And was like, oh, we want to torture this guy. Here's what we're going to do.
Here's a greater thing I wanted to say about what was working for me is that this whole film was an exercise in sort of, I could buy into all of this because I think when you combine psychedelics, the power that they have with, culture and civilization that still justifies killing people, this is what you get. You get, like you say, why are humans like that?
Yeah.
If you are in a world where you're supposed to kill people to survive and that this ritual is a given thing, your brain might go, you could convince yourself to do that.
We are the product of culture after culture convincing themselves that certain things are okay.
Right. These things have been around for all of our history.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. I loved the moment where the older dude claps his hands in front of Christian.
Oh yeah, it's so good. Fuck, dude.
It's so funny, my friend. He was mentioned. Won't name him. But that effect of like clapping his hands and you see like the wave and the shimmer effect from it.
Yeah.
He was talking about tripping on mushrooms and he's like, this is something I think you'd note and say, Tim, you tried it. But he was like, yeah, dude, when you're on mushrooms, you see your farts. Like,
oh
fart
man,
and just kind of the color and ripples of it, you know, just kind of the sound maybe getting out into the space becomes, you know, something you can see too.
Ryan, you've convinced me.
Exactly. But it was too perfect because that friend too. I was like, of course he would notice and, you know, share
that's
that.
Hilarious. Man.
Real midsummer tradition is their obsession with eating herrings en masse.
Oh, so right. That moment.
That was a moment I loved of being force-fed. That she refused, but that was all that much more horrifying when... See, they let that go. So it's like, that's an example of, you know, they're in control, but not. She didn't actually end up eating the herring, you know? And it was okay.
Dude, that's fucked up, though. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that every fucking bully on the planet does. Where they go... You know, I had a kid do this to me once when I was in middle school. So I think I may have mentioned this before, actually. Down in the gym locker room, I'm late for gym class. There's one other kid, and I'm tying my shoe, and suddenly I've got a knife up against my neck. And he's got a look on his face like, I'm going to fucking kill you. And I'm like frozen because I'm like, I can't move. What the fuck is going on? And then there's this beat. And then he pulls it away and he starts laughing. He's like, I'm just fucking with you. It's the bully I'm just fucking with you thing. It's the fucking most fucked up thing anybody can do. And that's what it feels like. The herring thing is like, we were just fucking. We didn't really think you were going to be able to do it. We were just fucking with you.
You still did it. That's what's like.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
Yeah, like the "I'm just fucking with you" thing. It's like it's
she-
the motto of every bully ever.
They fully put it down her, like, try to force feed it to her.
Yeah, because they're seeing how far she'll go, or what she'll take. It's it's the worst.
I think that's all I got, Tim.
Shit.
Oh, here's this a bunch of mention. You know how much I loved when I told him the trajectory of Christian's character, put in the wheelbarrow and then the bear skin. This was a quote from a review of just putting that kind of stuff of the trajectory of the film being a male director's, quote, a male director's masochistic fantasy of emasculation at the hands of a matriarchal cult.
I saw that. Get over yourself.
I thought it was a good way to put it.
Really?
I think that's what it
feel
was
like
there.
It's too like, I don't know.
I don't like the finality of it, as I said, but
I think
it's not literally a fantasy, but it's, I think, playing on like, I don't know. I think that works for me. There's something in the utter emasculization. That's not how you say it, but you know what I mean?
That quote feels to me like somebody who took umbrage with a man getting his comeuppance.
Oh, I don't think they put it as a negative thing.
Oh, really?
I think they were describing it as a matter of fact, like a male
maybe
would write this for that, you know?
Maybe it's just the term emasculation where it's like, it made me think they had a problem with it.
No, because the man is the one getting emasculated.
I know. Where they're like, it made me think they were saying that's a problem for them.
Oh, I didn't read it that way.
Okay, well, cool.
I just thought that was just a nice way to sort of not fully, but sort of get at something about what I maybe liked about that fate of his.
Yeah, I mean, I think does anybody deserve what they get in this?
Does anyone deserve to die?
Right. But I think this idea of, she's she's scorned.
Yeah.
And this is she's punishing him because of that. It's like, yes, but also he's a piece of shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, he's not the victim here. That's why that quote makes me feel weird. It's like, it makes me feel like he's somehow victimized. It's like, no, first of all, they're all victimized at the hands of these fucking insane people. But also, he's a piece of shit. And it makes sense why she made that decision. Mm-hmm. So maybe the quote still works.
I don't know. I'm confused because it sounds like exactly how you described it is what I took away from the quote.
Right.
We got another section, Tim.
I know we do. The only other thing I want to say,
I know.
The only thing I want to say is the music is just fucking killer.
I agree.
It's so good.
Great. All right. Next section. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
The only thing I had that didn't work for me, I think it actually might have been intentional.
Right.
To make us sort of look at the boyfriend as a putz. But the way he kept saying, and the gaslighting too, the way he kept going, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" Even like later, like when one of the other foreigners, abandoned the other one, and he's like, "Are they okay?" It was just like a little. Everything else about the movie, I could buy the characters as being real.
It's
but
like
this
they
one
slimmed
just
his
felt
dimensionality down just a little.
It was just
too
a little
much.
too easy. I was just yelling at him whenever he did that in a way that wasn't. Yeah, maybe it shouldn't be. I want to say that wasn't fun, but then that could still be, again, effective and intentional. But that just wasn't. I don't know. That was the one mix kind of meh thing.
I have one that's really stupid. I don't like the style of t-shirt that everybody had on. All the outsiders are wearing like a scoop neck, and it's sort of this frumpy looking t-shirt. And I'm like, bro, it's 2019. Scoop neck's out.
Maybe more evidence it's all a story world.
No, it just is one of those things where I was like, God, if I was in this movie and they put that on me, I would just not feel
Sorry,
comfortable
guys,
in
find
it.
someone else.
Yeah, you gotta fucking cast somebody who's, okay with scoop necks.
Okay. Tim Aslan was originally cast in this film, everyone.
It is my casting, unfortunately. That's why I don't do it anymore. I'm like, I don't want to be a dickhead.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't too long. I liked Falling Under the Spell. It wasn't too weird for sure. It wasn't too. Maybe people say it's too full of itself. People say the directing. Where I'm just trying to think of critiques that I might have read that the directing was great, but the writing wasn't. I don't know.
There's a surface reaction I have, and I've had this to a number of movies, Hereditary included, Requiem for a Dream, where I'm like, why did we want to see this? You know what I mean? That sort of, because it's so unsettling and upsetting.
I mean, that connects back to that question of why horror.
But that's what we had this sort of conversation briefly in the elevator when we were leaving, where I was like, it's just so upsetting. And it's sort of like, yeah, that's the adult version of being scared that we've been searching for.
Yeah.
You know, that's like, we can never be scared
I'm like,
in
Tim,
the way.
you want to be scared and put off. It just happened. What are you complaining about?
And look, I had fucking nightmares. Like, it did the thing. I got to my apartment and it just felt eerie as fuck. Everything felt like it was moving at a weird pace. Like my own reality was slowed down because of the effect of that movie being in this weird pacing sort of, you know, slow crawl of
sun not
doom.
going down.
Yeah. And I just, I mean, it did the thing. And I'm like, I don't know if I like it.
That's what I was talking to you about after we saw it, where it's like, Tim, you kept saying, I just so distinctly heard you say multiple times, I want to be scared.
I want to feel that feeling that I had when I was a kid. But then when you're actually feeling it, you're like, oh, right, there's a reason we like create a construct to not feel that way. Because it's scary.
Yeah.
So good job, you did it. You
and I think it's important though when we ask why though to feel that. I think it's not enough. Purging's quite the right word, but think of like what might have been scary 50 years ago is less scary now. Though you also have things that are just still always just as terrifying. But even if it's still as effective and scary, what's different is it's knowable. The information of this situation has happened. We are intellectually prepared for it. Does not mean we are emotionally prepared or it justifies it happening at all. But in sort of our, I think, quest for survival that's built in us, our database is being filled the more we can sort of explore these very deep embedded fear points. And that's where it's a purging. And I don't know, to kind of mention too, I mean, this is coming off of what didn't work. I'm going to be talking about what maybe didn't work for other people. And I was remembering someone I talked to, and they were kind of describing it more. They were saying, they described it as like it was an experimental, like the film. And I said, no, like for me, it's more, it's finding new, interesting ways to combine things that have come before to make something wholly unique.
I don't even know what that like said, the term experimental means.
He said that's what he means. Is it's something that's not, I think, previously known or done.
Right.
And those are my favorite films, Tim.
Me too.
Like that's what P.T. Anderson is all about.
Yeah.
It's why can't help but be a fanboy of his. Kubrick too.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess that's just all to say. Stuff didn't certainly not work for me, but I
think story-wise,
I guess it's still films also like that. They'll grow on me.
Yeah,
I think this will.
I think the only thing story-wise that I could kind of put into it didn't work is just there was a point when I was like, you all should know that you're in trouble. And I was on the fence of how much I bought into them. Like when the first British guy gets taken off and that's a thin fucking explanation of like, we only had room for one
thing,
car
like you had
in the one truck.
The fiance or whatever, of course, she was freaking out accordingly. But I think why it was still buy-inable for me was because all of a sudden this information becomes secondhand removed.
I know.
You have someone at the dinner table being like, oh no, it's not that at all.
It's
because
hard.
I took her myself to the blah blah blah.
It's hard as the viewer, and I caught myself thinking this. I'm like, Well, of course, I think they should know better because I have all the information.
Exactly.
And yet...
Put yourself there.
Yeah. Fuck.
Let's do things of note.
Okay.
Things of note! This should be interesting.
So, I mean, we talked about that transition into the plane earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think why I just wanted to remember you mentioned the painting with the bear, too, in the living room.
What's that all about? Give it
I
to me.
think this is, that's possible evidence for, much like Audition, that this is all a questionable possibility playing out in her head.
I thought I had that thought.
You have all these little seeds of things that combine that are around you, and this is just dealing with that insecurity of a relationship coming apart.
Well, and there are clues. There's definitely clues. We see her under that painting after we don't know how much time has passed. There's a time jump,
right? And assume this is an actual trip planned,
right? The sequence goes. She finds out her parents died. We see her moaning and crying in Christian's arms, and then we hard cut to her asleep in that bed underneath the bear picture.
Also,
I'm pretty sure. And then he comes in and he says something very specific. He's like, hey, I'm going to go to this party for like 45 minutes. Like, you can keep sleeping. And she says, I wasn't sleeping. And I think that you could take that as cue that that's a lie.
And
that we're now in dreamland.
And maybe this is more evidence for the whole thing's just dreamland, doesn't matter one way or the other, but the email that she gets from the sister, the kind of like, I'm in darkness and I'm bringing them with me, or something like that. Mm-hmm. That felt like we were already like a connection to the horror that comes somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I think that upon watching it a couple more times, I bet you there's lots of clues that could allow you to interpret it that way. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that it's in any way I don't think you will find that in any way it is advertently true. Mm-hmm. Is that how you would say that?
I mean, in there, that ambiguity is what makes it work and good, yeah.
Right. But yeah, I had that thought. I was like, maybe this is all fucking in her head. Maybe it starts from the fucking trip. She does a couple times cross over. She has these moments of like, now she's blacked out and then she's waking up and being like, where am I kind of thing. That happens a couple times.
She could never get out of that bathroom.
Right.
For me, I don't know. I imagine it. If I had to pick one, I like that it's with that transition we already talked about of going into the plane. That emotionally felt to me like my head kicking into, okay, so let me imagine this trip and I'm getting on the plane, like, and then you see that play out.
Well, and as a thing of note, the way that this film came about speaks to the potential for this being just a big allegory for a breakup, because Aster basically was approached by the Swedish Film Commission, I think, first.
A Swedish film company.
Okay.
And then they got the commission to support it because it was shot there or whatever. Hungary it was shot in, I think.
This movie, there's a Swedish Midsummer that was made in 2003, I think, or 7, I forget which it was, or 13, I don't fucking remember. And like I thought it was just interesting. I didn't look to see if there's any connection between like who produced it or owns it or whatever, but that there's this same titled Swedish movie from 10 years ago or whatever, and maybe that's where like the person who had those rights was like, hey, we have the rights to this horror film from years ago. Let's see if we can find a good
right. So
director
originally
to do
the
it.
investors were like wanting to make a typical sort of more Hostel-esque slasher film.
Right.
Approached Ari Aster, it sounds like 4 years ago before Hereditary was made, and said, well, can you do this? And he couldn't really get into it except for until he took that approach that you said of thinking of it as a allegory for a breakup.
Yeah.
And that he could just take the money and do what he wants with that slim constraint of having people get killed off at an event like that.
Because it seems to me, based on Hereditary and this, like his pocket is grief. He's really good at tapping into depicting grief. Because like think about when you go through a breakup or you lose somebody, right? You spend a lot of time, or at least I do, in imagining the storylines that surround that, whether it's thinking about things that have already played out or things that you want to play out or fears that you have of how things might play out. Like, in a way, you could look at this movie just as one big imagined version in her head of grieving for this loss and for potentially, like, maybe Christian broke up with her when he found out that she was...
Yeah.
That her parents had died. He was like, that's it. And then the rest of the movie is just in her head imagining all of these things. It's possible.
Yep.
Am I gaslighting her by saying that? Shit.
So we know, too, that this was an amalgam of different spiritual movements that he said, quote, have nothing to do in many cases with even Sweden, but there are hundreds of things kind of woven together here. So, like, you do have the maypole, like that thing that they raise. That's the real Midsommar thing.
No doubt.
But then I was like trying to think, and I just was Googling for like, okay, but I want to get into this sacrifice thing. Oh, real quick, this was really funny. I ended up looking up Midsommars at the official like Sweden.se website for like visitors and stuff.
Now it's fucked. They're like, it's
So it's like a little girl
it's
smiling.
Like,
it says Midsummer.
It should have now in parenthetical, not like the movie.
Well, this is, because parenthetical would go well with their blurb here. I just thought it was great. I have to read. Okay. There's official description of Midsummer. In mid-June, school is out and nature has burst into life. It seems like the sun never sets. In fact, in the north of Sweden, it doesn't. And in the south, only for an hour or two. This calls for celebration. Friends and family gather for the most typical Swedish tradition of all, Midsummer.
Is this are you reading the summary of the movie?
No, Tim. This is the summary. And then so on their official website, you have this very European humored, like typical like YouTube kind of video of animated to it, where it's like Swedish Midsummer for Dummies. You see this, Tim? And it's like this whole, it's like Riley narrated.
Aww,
here, I'll
looks
play it
cute.
for you a bit.
Everything in the starter kit.
Oh.
Remember, here everyone brings their own drinks. Make sure you get to the state-owned off license in plenty of time.
And so, like, look at
everybody
that.
Brings their own drinks because you don't you don't want somebody slipping you that hallucinogenic tea.
So it's like, and it's just so, this is what I said was so the European humor of like, it lists the essentials and sort of, look at that, speckled in amongst like the bug spray and poncho is beer and condoms. Like, you know, you're planning your family trip here. And so, okay. Oh, and then also this is why I mentioned it. So they say in this video, it's so funny. They like, and you wonder how much this was their humor or not. It says, even though we no longer use ritual sacrifice.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, wait, so was that like an acknowledged thing?
I think it's just a thing.
Right. So on the Wikipedia, which I don't totally trust for this kind of thing,
Right.
it's sort of like there were kind of connections to something like it, but they said, no, there's no actual evidence of Midsummer. But what I did look up was I just Googled like Sweden human sacrifice and did find some truth to that, and also to the number 9 of sacrifices. So there's Gamla Uppsala is a village parish.
Uppsala, I've been there.
Really?
Yep.
You've been here, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you
As a kid.
confirm this or deny it. As far as the feel of it there. But so there, sorry, this is more reading from Wikipedia here. But yeah, they did some kind of, like in the film, ritualistic sacrifices to appease the gods. So sacrifice, yeah. So began human sacrifice, and this is, starting way back when. But the prayer of sacrifice, so it's been used for many ages and generations, beginning to slaughter a human. Okay, so at the Temple of Uppsala in Gamla Uppsala, she worshipped 3 gods, sacrifices as follows: every kind of male creature, 9 victims are offered. By the blood of these creatures, it is the custom to appease the gods. Their bodies, moreover, are hanged in a grove, which is adjacent to the temple. This grove is so sacred to the people that the separate trees in it are believed to be holy. Again, like the holy tree, like the movie. Are believed to be holy because of the death or putrefaction of the sacrificial victims. There are even dogs and horses hang besides the human beings. The incantations, however, which are usually sung in the performance of libation of this kind, are numerous and disgraceful, and it is better not to speak of them. So this is obviously all quoting Adam of Bremen.
Cool.
It's to immerse a human being alive. Sorry, there's just more here. For 9 days, feasts and sacrifices of this kind are celebrated. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, if you want to read more about this, look up Gamla Uppsala on Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in Sweden when I was a kid, we were in Stockholm, and herring is legit. That gets a thing.
I told you.
They love them herrings. That was on the website
I was looking at.
I remember you kind of eat it bone and all. You just kind of eat it.
Just get it down there.
Yeah. I did not like it. I was like, how old? I was like 8 or 9 maybe.
Sushi. So last thing of note I had was, I think this is really interesting in films like this, Mandy, Toad Road.
I still need to watch
We are seeing psychedelics presented in a kind of more respectfully presented, interested, how is it actually kind of way, where or in the sort of history of psychedelics, we're in what's called the third wave, where you had a first wave, they're open, they're being studied, blah blah blah. Second is when they're outlawed, put in the underground, and now third is just when the potential is being so acknowledged that we are slowly being more, there's legal means to study them, blah blah blah, worked on. So I just think it's really interesting to see how this third wave is reflected in media and art.
Cool.
That's all.
Yeah, it's happening. My stomach's growling.
I know, it's time to do things, Tim. We got to go. It's my lunchtime.
Yeah. Cool, dude.
Great.
You got any recommendations?
Yeah, man. I'm over the Godzilla films now. I'm not over Godzilla films ever, but I'm done with listing my Godzilla films. So for Mr. Aster, I had to see one of his short films was out there. I haven't watched it for a while, but after Hereditary came out, I had to track down The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. It's a short film of his. I think it's kind of close to half an hour. Yeah, you should watch that, because I'd say when you were saying kind of grief is his bag, I think this makes me think more his bag is kind of extreme conflicts coming to light. Extreme human conflicts coming to light.
Cool.
So check it out.
What's it called?
The Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
Where do you find it?
It's online.
Okay.
A dark domestic melodrama satire about the ties that bind and the ties that really bind.
Whoa.
That's its
get it? I bet a little twine. A little twine
description.
that ties the bind that ties with twine.
What do you got?
Well, because we're in Scandinavia, I thought of one of my favorite Scandinavian films, which is actually Norwegian. But it's called Headhunters. It is kind of a heist-ish movie, but it's so fucking well done. Twists and turns, and some pretty intense scenes of the things that the lead character has to kind of do to get out of trouble. It's fucking great. And I actually want to watch it again, because I think I've watched it twice. It's been a couple years, so it's really good.
Headhunters?
It's called Headhunters, yeah.
All right.
Or Hodejegerne.
Sure, that's right.
Yeah, probably not. But yeah, Yeah, it's around. You can find it.
Here's the hat, Tim.
Oh, it's
Decide
my turn.
our fate.
It's my turn. Is it my turn to do this one? The Devil's Backbone.
What year?
2001.
Great. Next week's film.
I think this is a Guillermo del Toro
Produced one, I think.
Yeah.
He
that
presents
sounds right.
a lot of movies.
That's right. The Devil's Backbone. Cool.
Yeah.
Getting into them early aughts again.
Right. Oh, man, I just looked it up. It's Devil's Backbone Brewing Company comes up first. Great. That's what I wanted. Thanks, Google. In the meantime, until Devil's Backbone, you can find us at dismemberinghorror.com.
Yep, and Dismembering Horror on Instagram and at gmail.com, and on Twitter at dishorrorpod, and Ryan's handle is at Mayor McDuffie on Instagram. He has a portfolio website at ryanmcduffie.cu. No, .se.
Tim. .com.
Oh, it's .com. I thought it was.
Thanks for mentioning it. Nearly.
.gov.
Yeah.
And I'm just at Tim Aslan everywhere, wherever you want.
He's at Tim is always at Tim.
That's very true.
Well, as I say, in closing, thanks for joining us.
And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.